So with that, I am going to do a couple things at lunch today. I'm going to give you our perspective on are we in a tech bubble or aren't we? And then I'm going to do two quick commercials, one for Digital New York and one for us. And then most importantly, Tom and I are going to do a fireside chat that I think you'll find very interesting. For those of you that know Tom Evans, you'll know why we asked him to do a fireside chat. For those of you who don't, once you see the slides on what he accomplished and has accomplished so far in his career, you'll know why we have picked that. So with no further ado, you know, this question has come up, I would say starting about October, of this concept of are we in a tech bubble or not? And in reality, on the one hand, you'd say, well, gosh, you know, digital media IPOs are sort of back, but look, they're not anywhere back anywhere near in terms of the volume that you saw in 1999 and 2000. You could say, gosh, you know, there's billion-dollar valuations, multi-billion-dollar valuations coming everywhere, and it's coming across private placements, it's coming across the M&A world, and it's coming across the IPO world. So it's not just IPO investors, it's not just VCs that are giving these valuations. It's happening everywhere. It happened obviously yesterday in terms of Nest. So you say, gosh, you know, not a lot of revenue. What's going on? Maybe we are in a tech bubble. The Wall Street Journal did this article in October that we found interesting, which was, in fact, when you look at the numbers in terms of the number of IPOs, the first-day returns, you know, the size of the companies, that would suggest that we really are not in a tech bubble, again, relative to sort of where we were in 99 and 2000. And also, when you look at M&A and VC volume, again, look at 2012, 2013, nowhere near the kind of numbers that you see in 99 and 2000. So again, would not suggest that we're in a tech bubble at all. So if that's the case, what's really going on? Well, what we really think is going on in a very big way is that consumer monetization models are much more understood today than they were, say, 5 years ago. And Pradek alluded to this morning in his conversations, but you know, great examples are Facebook and Twitter. When they decided to turn on the revenue model, they had the scale, they built the scale first, and they decided to turn the revenue model, and in fact, off they went to the races in terms of scaling the revenue. Similarly, if you think about Facebook's acquisition of Instagram last year, I think if you were to sort of ask a bunch of people whether they overpaid for that, I think most people would have said absolutely, like why in the hell would they ever pay that kind of money? Well, they had 30 million unique users at the time. Today they have 150 million unique users. I would argue that the joke's on all of us that thought it was overvalued. And in fact, it really turned out to be quite a smart acquisition. And you know, what's happening is you're seeing this sort of consumer monetization sort of everywhere now. And so as you think about, you know, it's not just gaming anymore. You see examples, you know, again, Nest is an example. You see shopping, Pinterest, you see Waze, you see traffic, you see everything, everywhere. You're seeing this sort of massive monetization, if you will. And I think that the world has changed for good in that regard. And if you think about, you know, it took 3.5 years for Facebook to reach 50 million users, and it took 35 days for Angry Birds. And without giving too much of a shout out to We Heart It, I think however long it took them to reach 25 million users, you know, I think it's just the world has changed. And I think when you think about why to be bullish on this space and this business, it's because of this in terms of the ability to really reach scale much quicker. When you look at what are the internet leaders doing, I think that the two things that is the most impressive to me, you know, first is what we said this morning, which is when you look at the big internet players, all of them have really transformed their business to be more mobile-centric and now have, you know, 40 to 50% of their business from mobile. When you look at Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, and Google, they've taken very, very different M&A strategies, and yet all of them, I think, have done a great job. As Patrick will be happy to hear, eBay is our favorite best-in-class in that regard, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you know, Amazon being much more tactical in approach, I would say eBay and Google being the most transformative in terms of really willing to kind of place bets from an M&A perspective and go out and chase it. And so you say to yourself, well, gosh, you know, that's hard. That's hard to really transform your business and via M&A, and it doesn't always work. what's the sort of explanation behind it? I think that what we think the explanation behind it is that, in fact, these guys have courage, and they've got courage to sort of say, what's coming next when you think about the internet. So if you think first it started that the desktop was chewing into the traditional media world, and you think about Google buying YouTube, and at the time people would say, gosh, why did they pay that much money for that? Well, again, in hindsight, that was brilliant, right? When you think about the internet then maturing and becoming more of a transactional medium, and you say, again, well, why did eBay pay so much for PayPal? Again, today that's like the core at the heart of the value of the company. And so not everything is going to be work out great. So some would argue that the Buddy Media, the Vitru, the Wildfire acquisitions haven't been the best sort of a year later. But if you think about this concept that people aren't really overpaying, they're just really strategically trying to think ahead and saying, what am I going to need as we look ahead to, so the obvious one today is mobile, and that's why we think you're going to see a bunch of billion-dollar-plus mobile exits in 2014. So we would argue that we're not really in a bubble here. We would argue that the way to think about this is, what's coming next, and how are we going to stay ahead of the curve, and how can M&A help in that regard? And so, again, I give all these guys a lot of credit in terms of using M&A in that regard. And I think this is specifically is where you're seeing sort of a parting of the ways between the kind of next generation leaders and the sort of more traditional media companies and ad holding companies. And I don't think that's going to change, unfortunately, and for a whole lot of reasons that we could talk about. But we thought we'd give you a little bit of background in terms of how we think about valuations and bubbles and whether we're in there or not. This is our slide of eBay as kind of the prime example where, I think over time, if you think about, buying PayPal, buying GSI, buying all of the small mobile stuff to sort of connect the consumer experience, thinking about Magento and the small merchant end, GSI and this large merchant end. So really done a great job of kind of taking a single business and really broadening that out from a scale perspective in terms of capabilities and using all kinds of different M&A, whether that's the card.io in terms of a small capability to build the payments stuff, or whether that's Braintree from last year. So big fans of what they've been able to do from a building the business through M&A perspective, and again, all kinds of size in terms of M&A transactions. So that's a little bit on that.